Hey there, you're listening to Delve, the official thought leadership podcast of the Desautels Faculty of Management at McGill University. My name is Eric Dicaire, I'm Delve's managing editor, and today we're talking about personality types in the C-suite.
A lot of extroverted skills especially, you can practice them. Like you can give a speech, you can do these things on the outside. So I would say, especially if you're an introverted person, you should never feel limited by that.
And the idea is you need to act like the other. So you learn to do that, but some people are better actors than others, and some people are more flexible. But I think over time, as you age, you get a bit more experience.
So that was Professor Karl and Gabi Hartshorne-Mehl, the authors of a new book called We're All Ambiverts Now, Introverts, Ambiverts, and Extroverts in the C-suite. So based on conversations with over 750 CEOs, they found that, to be effective, leaders have to be both introverted and extroverted at the same time. So in other words, ambiverted. So in this conversation, we unpack that idea. We talked about the differences between being an extrovert and an introvert, their positive and negative qualities, and why it's necessary for CEOs to be a bit of both. So before we jump into the conversation, a quick reminder, don't forget to check out our newsletter. We publish every week with fresh thought leadership content that is going to change how you think about management. So you can subscribe at delve.mcgill.ca. So all right, with that out of the way, let's delve into it. Karl and Gabi, thank you so much for joining. How are you guys?
Oh, it's great. Weather's starting to turn.
Yeah, spring is here. It's starting to feel good. Yeah. How about you, Gabi? So you're calling in from Vancouver. How's the weather?
Yeah, it's nice and sunny right now, so feeling good.
That sounds beautiful. Well, yeah. So I mean, just to start off, I just want to congratulate you both on publishing the book. It's not out yet, but it will come out soon. Maybe by the time this recording comes out, people will be able to buy it. But congratulations. How does it feel to complete the project? I feel like it's a lot of work, and you guys put a lot of yourselves into it. Yeah, how does it feel?
Well, it's funny because I've been working at it for about 7 or 8 years. So I've had some good friends that like me say, oh, is it the second edition? And I've had to go somewhat sheepishly, no, it's the first one, but at least we got it done. And Gabi came in kind of a couple of years ago on it when she was a student at McGill, and so made a huge difference and helped get it out into the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, what was something that surprised you as you were working on this? Because you interviewed like 750 CEOs? Like that's an absurd number.
So Eric, there's few advantages being older. One is you've done something longer than almost anyone else. So in my PhD, I interviewed CEOs and started a CEO class some years ago here at McGill, and then a CEO radio show about, a little over a dozen years ago. So I interview a CEO every week, and then we have about 30 CEOs to the CEO Insights MBA class in the fall. So the numbers add up over many, many years like that.
Right.
So that's how the numbers are unusual, but it's been a long time at it. And I've been asking them about being an introvert or extrovert for in the area of 10 years. And I ask every CEO about that to get a sense of what the data says and getting some stats and some numbers from it.
Yeah. So, okay, some quick definitions. So extrovert is someone who gets energy by interacting with others, right? Introvert is a more solitary type figure. Then ambivert is like a mix of both of those things, right?
Well, you put your finger on it, Eric, that the central idea is the response to stimulation. Extroverts like me love it and seek out stimulation and take extrovert breaks to get stimulated. Introverts love people and are great with people, but at a certain point they tip over and they need to recharge their batteries. And an ambivert is someone who acts like an introvert at times and an extrovert at other times. And the title book, We're All Ambiverts Now, is saying that as a senior leader, and this is not everyone by any means, this is a really small part of the population, you need to, as an extrovert myself, act like an introvert and shut up and listen to be an effective leader. And other times, introverts need to act a bit like an extrovert and work the room a bit, because that's what's required of senior leaders. Now, not everyone wants to be a senior leader. Not everyone needs to be a senior leader. And so that's about senior leaders. But at the same time, you need to be authentic and true to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's super interesting. So then, yeah, what surprised you? Like, because I'm curious, like talking to so many people, like this is a rare kind of opportunity to get some insights into like some of the, the big leaders of today. Like, yeah, what were some of the takeaways that you got as you were working on the book?
What really jumped out at me is that I thought, and the literature said most people, leaders were extroverts. So it turned out about 40% of senior leader CEOs were Introverts about 40% extroverts and about 20% ambiverts. So that's one of the key big surprises for myself based on years of reading and contributing to the literature.
One of the kind of takeaways that my major takeaways from the book was that it's all very much relative. Everything is really on a spectrum. And so I remember Karl, I was also the CEO series radio show producer in my undergrad. And so one of my last projects there was Karl and me for his previous book. I interviewed Karl. And I remember I asked him, like, do you think I'm an introvert or an extrovert? And he thought I was an introvert because he is so extroverted, you know? So it's very interesting. It's very kind of, I would say, very relative.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting. And that raises an interesting point too of like the performing that role. Like it's because you can be perceived as an introvert even though you're extroverted. You can be perceived as an extrovert even though you're introverted, which I find interesting.
And the idea is you need to act like the other. So I talked to a bunch of actors about how do you act? And you play a part. So you learn to do that, but some people are better actors than others, and some people are more flexible. But I think over time, as you age, you get a bit more experience. And if you have a spouse or children later in life, you've got to act a certain part. And if you go to your partner's work and try to be the center of attention, everybody thinks it's sad. And boy, what a bad partner. And when my wife teaches grade 2, and around grade 2, the parent loses their name. You're now Gabby's father. And if you make a big fuss with all the other parents roll their eyes and go, listen, you're taller, you make more money, you have more education. You went on every level other than cuteness with a grade 2 child. Let her be the center of attention. And everybody goes, that's a good point.
No, that's it. I mean, yeah. So I came across a BBC article that you were quoted in, Karl. And you had mentioned that being an ambivert can be tiring. And I thought that was interesting because to your point where like of having to perform as the other one sometimes as an effective leader, I'm just curious if you could talk more about that.
Well, it's something where you realize that you have your natural need or desire or liking of stimulation. And as an extrovert, I really seek that out. So when I had to be quiet and listen, it does take energy from me, but I recognize I'm doing it for a better purpose. So a higher purpose, whether it's as a professor or as a parent or as a partner, you're trying to do those things. So you are going to go out of your way because of the usefulness, the goodness you're doing. But at a certain point, I find it draining. And so on Friday night, my wife's a grade 2 teacher, and she comes home exhausted from being with kids. And we often order food in, or I prefer to go get the food, because when I go to the restaurant, I can talk to the people. But my wife, after being with small kids all day as a teacher, needs the break to watch tennis, or the Canadians win, hopefully, and to enjoy that. So it's something where I look for extrovert breaks because I need that. And if I need to be quiet and be by myself, it takes energy from me in a way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think about so if I'm a leader of a company or, any organization, and I'm naturally, and this is real, I'm naturally more of an introvert, but, some jobs they're busy. You spend your days in meetings and interacting with people and like.
Not to rub it in, but now.
Yeah.
You're doing an interview.
I know.
Well, so that's more of an extroverted sort of thing.
You're totally right. In a scenario like this, where it's a controlled environment, it's an interview, it's one-on-one, it's more personal. It feels less overwhelming to me. But throw me in a room with a lot of people and I get quiet and I would rather just leave. Like it's not because I dislike anyone there. It's just a lot of noise and like, I don't know who to talk to. Like,
That's right. I mean, Gabby, I'm just curious about law school. As an extrovert, when's the challenges at law school?
It's probably all the reading for sure. I was very surprised, like when comparing business school to law school, because I think it's a lot more individualistic than business school is. And so that's kind of something where you have to be a little bit more introverted. You have to like just put the time in, read like the full textbook, just everything, versus in business school, we had a lot more group projects. We were kind of more team oriented. And I think that's a little bit better for an extrovert. So I thought that was a very interesting change. I would say, like, in terms of what you were saying, Eric, I think that that's a lot of what Susan Cain wrote about in her book, Quiet Power, which was kind of one of the main foundations of Karl's idea. And it kind of is the idea that we're built, or we live in an extrovert friendly world. And she kind of goes through like the history of like industrialization and like the growing of cities and why like everything became increasingly more anonymous. And so as a result of that, you had to kind of develop yourself, not by who like your family was, like in your small town as it was before, but more so kind of in terms of like you could define your own personality. And she calls it the rise of like the culture of personality. And that's why we live in such a extrovert dominant world. So I feel like that's something a lot of introverts definitely resonate with.
So then, like, of the people that you talk to, like, what are some tactics that you've heard from, like, maybe more introverted leaders to sort of adapt to an environment that's biased towards, or that feels like it's made for extroverts?
Well, something where I think there is a bias towards the extroverts. Things have got better. What an introvert needs to do is recognize they have to play a certain role, but they recognize they're going to tip over, see that coming, and schedule time when you have time by yourself, that you're going to recharge your batteries. And It may be in your office with the door closed, doing some email, listening to music, going for a walk, walking your dog, things like that, where you know it's going to happen, so you schedule the time because it's something you understand yourself and is predictable. And recognize that as a good introverted leader, that you may at times rightly step back more and say, hey, Eric, what do you think? And so you bring other people to lead the conversation, and it makes them happy because they are being honored, their capabilities are being respected. But I find with introverts, if I'm going to a meeting in a couple of days where you're going to be at Eric as an introvert, I would say to you, hey, Eric, we're going to talk about this in 2 days. I might call on you. Would that be all right? Because then you can do your homework. You can be prepared. And then what I do in a meeting, if I look at you, I'll look at you and I'm saying, Eric, are you ready to comment? And if you shake your head, no, I won't call on you. But if you nod slightly, I'll go, Eric, what do you think? I suspect you've given this some thought, which you have, and then you have interesting things to say. Where an extrovert like Gabby or myself, I might even, as we walk in the meeting, I go, Gabby, I'm going to call on you right away. And she'll go, sure. And she may not have profound insights right away, but she'll be charming and amusing, and people will prompt conversation and will get us going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and it sounds like there's a lot of self-awareness that's involved there. So I don't know, like Gabby, like when did you realize you were an extrovert? Because like I don't know if I don't know if everyone knows what personality type they have, but I'm curious like how you came around to that conclusion.
It's very interesting. I think I was more extroverted until I started working for Karl, but Karl is so extroverted that I had to like manage upwards as well. And so I became a little bit less extroverted for sure. I also think one thing we talk about in the book as well is it is very environmental. So I think I was extroverted for sure up until the pandemic, and then I had to adapt. And so I definitely became a lot more ambiverted before I even knew what ambiversion was. I definitely you had to learn to like spend time more just like alone and like in your own thoughts. So I definitely think it's very fluid. It's like a spectrum. It's you can always develop.
The other interesting thing is a cultural overlay. Now, we could talk about BC culture versus Quebec, but that's probably getting a bit wound up. But I took students to Ghana and the Côte d'Ivoire, and then last year, Morocco and Cairo. And part of it's seeing some cultures like Japan, we've had an MBA there for decades. I've been there 8 or 9 times. It's more of a more introverted culture. So it's a bell curve, which is a bit on the introvert side. And then I took students afterwards to Bangkok. And I said, my theory is that the Thais are a bit more extroverted. It's still a bell curve, but they're more extroverted. And we asked a bunch of executives over there and McGill alumni, and they agreed that my theory is broadly true. But the most extroverted person in the world is Japanese. The most introverted person in the world is Thai, going against kind of the cultural mores. But when we lived in England, our kids were born in England, and we bought British books for our son, Eric. We call him Eric because my wife's Francophone. And we go to Paris and buy French books. And partly children's books are teaching you how to be a good French child or a good British. And so extroversion and introversion is a bit how you should act in a culture. And so we can see that in other parts of the world. I mean, Gab, Do you see any, is Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver any different or a little bit different at all? I'm just curious.
I think Vancouver, I'm not sure how it would classify introvert, like communication style wise, but Vancouver's definitely way more laid back than Montreal and Toronto. I think Montreal is probably the most extroverted because I think Toronto is a little bit more formal, perhaps like a little bit. I don't exactly know what the word for that is, but Montreal seems like it is a bit more like kind of party fun.
So even in our great country, our three biggest cities are a bit different.
What is it about ambiverts then? Because I think we focused a lot on the differences between introvert and extroversion. Like, what is it about them that makes them succeed? Like, why are they so effective as leaders?
So there's part of the population is generally ambiverted. But what I'm saying is, what we're saying in the book is that you need to act a part at times. And even as I talked about in grade 2, as a parent, you take a child there and you got to act the part and calm down because they're the center of attention. And if you go to your partner's work, you shouldn't try to be the center of attention because it's just too much.
Yeah.
So there's social roles we play in a number of contexts that we lean into a bit, but you got to be authentic.
Yeah.
And that's a big, strong issue in leadership is the authentic. And today we share more. When I worked for IBM years ago, we had blue suits, white shirts, and red ties with a female equivalent. And you could roll me in and roll someone else out. You probably couldn't tell the difference, sort of thing, because we were a corporate person.
Yeah.
So we've gone beyond that now where we're saying we want our leaders to be authentic. So if you're in Montreal and you're genuinely a Leafs fan because you grew up there, you probably wouldn't have said that 10 or 20 years ago, but today you're more apt to, with a bit of a smile and, joke around a bit, admit that sort of thing and just be more authentic and true to yourself. And part of it, I asked the CEOs in the last year or so about mental health.
Right.
And two-part question. One is, what are you doing for your people? But what are you doing for your mental health? Where 5 or 10 years ago, if you asked that, they go, well, you think something's wrong with me, where today it's something we think about, and it's a genuine conversation in a way it wasn't in the past.
Right. Yeah.
So we grow and move on in some ways. And I think today we're more authentic, more true to ourselves, and more honest about our weaknesses and occasional fragilities.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. So then, yeah, okay. And then in what kind of situations is an extrovert more desirable, or what kind of organizations?
Well, there's times like when an extrovert is going to, get out there and praise people and say, Eric got an award and we're just so proud of him. And it's something where they're going to make that big noise that you might be a little bit embarrassed, but you feel happy that you got recognized.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strength. And it's also that if you're out there trying to sell the organization and meeting, like if you're a McKinsey partner, you got to go meet clients and help bring business in. The more extroverted person, that might be a benefit at times in that relationship to go out there and do that.
Yeah.
So there's strengths and weaknesses to both. Though it's interesting in the sales call, there's been some research done on the sales call that, and I taught this at IBM years ago, the first half of a good complex sales call is saying, Eric, tell me about your needs. What are you looking for in terms of your recorder? You do a podcast. What are the issues you have? And then the second half is, Eric, I've got a product that just really helps you with what you want to do. And I'm enthusiastic, I'm extroverted, I'm excited about it as a good salesperson. So a good salesperson is a great listener and someone who has enthusiasm. So that's kind of ambiverted behavior in a way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So I don't know, Gabby, so you're in law school. I'm curious what advice you have to young people who are trying to find, or not just young people, maybe people who are, switching careers, but are trying to find a better fit for their personality type. I'm curious if you have any advice or any insights as to how they might go about that and what they should consider when they're trying to make their next step or build a career that they're happy with.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one of the coolest insights we kind of gained from the book was that, Karl, you didn't mention this, right? That all military leaders that you've interviewed, they're all introverts, right? And I think the kind of what I'm getting at there is that I think it really doesn't matter what your actual communication style is. And I think that's the most extreme example for sure, because you think of a military leader as somebody that's super dominant and controlling and maybe a lot loud and very extroverted. And I think that's a very specific case example where you can see that a lot of extroverted skills especially are very like, you can practice them. Like you can give a speech, you can do these things on the outside. So I would say, especially if you're an introverted person, you should never feel limited by that, because I think that extroversion especially is a very practicable skill. And then when you actually kind of become an expert at the extroverted skills, then you already have these unique introverted traits as well that make you a really strong leader.
Oh, that's okay. That's positive. That's like so. It sounds like more when you're building a career, and if you want to be happy, it's more about what you're doing, more so than maybe about the communication style.
For sure, I wouldn't let that limit you in any way, because it's always you can definitely practice everything.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So the book is called We're All Ambiverts Now.
Introverts, ambiverts, and extroverts in the C-suite. And you can pre-order it on Amazon, which is a big moment for authors like Gabby and I. The big moment is when you order on Amazon, it shows up the next day. So that's supposed to be September 7th. Maybe available earlier, but August, it's a kind of a dead time most of the world. So we probably won't hassle them to get it too much sooner.
Amazing. Okay. Well, you know what? I feel energized after this conversation. I want to thank you both, Karl and Gabby. Thank you so much for joining.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right, and that's a wrap. A special thanks to Karl and Gabby for joining us on the show. I'm going to put a link to their book in the show notes for you to check it out. And to our listeners, thank you so much for sticking with us. If you liked this interview, there's a lot more where that came from. Don't forget to sign up to our newsletter so you never miss our great thought leadership content. You can subscribe at delve.mcgill.ca. So that's delve.mcgill.ca. So McGill Delve is the official thought leadership platform for the Desautels Faculty of Management at McGill University. My name is Eric Dicaire, and I was your host today, and I produced and edited this episode. Professor Saku Montara is Delve's editor-in-chief, and he produced all the original music. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.